Okay, welcome to Chapter 9. This will be a fairly brief chapter, a good deal shorter than the others, in part I think because it's very difficult to write a chapter about internet law and internet technology and social media because, of course, you're constantly dealing with an updating and a change. So we'll dive in here, and some of these things I think are a little dated, but we're going to go ahead and take a look at them. Talk a little bit about spam. We all get a fair amount of spam. If we look at just email on an unprotected server, I think it's fair to say, up to 75% of email that you would get would be unwanted. Now, some of that is just, you used your credit card someplace and they're sending it to you. They're giving you, you went into an auto to buy a spark plug, and now AutoZone is sending you 50,000 emails a week. States have tried with limited success to regulate this. There has been a CAN-SPAM Act federally in 2003. It legalizes actually sending some of this stuff, but criminalizes if it's false. We've also tried to, because a lot of issues revolve around actors that are located overseas. We've tried to adopt the U.S. Safe Web Act, which gives a safe harbor for internet providers. They've been pretty much coddled through most of this and protected, the ones that are actually providing the platforms. When you think about it, I guess you should think a little bit about how the internet is set up formally. So when you're looking for something, let's suppose you're looking for campbell.edu. Campbell is what's called, that title before you get to the dot, is the second level domain, and then edu is your top level domain. And you can control these two things. They are registered through the Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers. And it also, by the way, sells some of these addresses. These addresses can be, there's a lot of different permutations of them. So, I mean, you may try to go out and control every part of your name and your business, but the problem is going to be there's always going to be one more way of thinking about this that you had. And I saw recently where both major political campaigns, the Trump campaign and the Biden campaign, of course, had secured control of like Biden.com, Trump.com, TrumpForPresident.com, BidenForPresident.com. But then there were issues about, well, did Biden control Biden Roman numeral 4.com, Biden for FOR President.com? Did he just control Biden for Arabic numeral 4 President.com? And of course, you can't think of everything. So I did see where, in criticizing the Trump administration's lack of a plan for the COVID-19, the Biden campaign bought the domain TrumpCovidPlan.com, and when you clicked on it, it took you to a blank site that said no files found. It was kind of a parody, like they've got no plan. And this can be an issue. Squatting, sometimes called cyber squatting, is when someone tries to make use of an SLD that is similar to a company or an individual's name. And there is anti-cyber squatting legislation. There can be fines. One very clever thing that's going on is, if you're like me and you sometimes misspell a word, is that people will typo squat. So let's suppose you have campbell.edu, CAMPBELL.edu. That's owned by Campbell University. But let's suppose you say, well, people often put, CAMPBEL, no double L.edu. So you go and you find out that single L Campbell has not been controlled. So you get control of that. And that way, if someone just types in Campbell without thinking about it, .edu, they're going to go to your site. This also, in theory, can fall under the ACPA. Meta tags are the key words in your HTML code, and we're not going to go deep into that, which direct users. One of the big things is who's going to turn up on a search and what search engines are controlling. Recently, there's been a revelation that um, different companies had paid very substantial amounts of money to ensure that their searches, when a search is run for a generic product, are going to be at the top of what is everybody's essentially search engine now, which is Google. Um, very profitable for Google to sell that. Copyright Digital Information Act. This protects copyright holders. It makes it criminal to break encryption on some material, although again, still allows for fair use. Now this is dated and really needs to be out of the course, but I put it in kind of as a homage to the past. Initially, one of the biggest areas where you saw the internet kind of engaging in illegal activity was in file sharing. So people wanted a song. So pick an old song like Old MacDonald's Wants a Farm. Let's suppose that is a huge song and people wanted it. Well, you could have gone to the old record store, bought an LP, or bought a CD, or around about the 1980s into the early 90s, you could go online and you could get a MP3 copy of Old MacDonald's Farm. And of course, no company could sell it to you directly, so a peer-to-peer network was set up. There were different ones. Napster was fairly famous for this. Recently, this same issue has been impacting not music, but increasingly movies, TV shows. So increasingly people are sharing across platforms protected copyrighted material, and it's really having an impact on the value and the ability of companies and individuals to invest money and try to recoup that money by selling tickets or limited access. All right, let's talk about social media. And the big issue, I guess the gorilla in the room is Facebook. This starts as a simple kind of almost directory that gets put online, but it quickly becomes a way in which people exchange ideas, comments, news. More people get their news from Facebook than from a single entity like CNN. The problem is, think about some legal issues. Think about, for example, let's suppose you have a husband and wife, they're going through a divorce, and the husband wants to know if the wife had planned this, had communicated with anybody. Well, he could file a discovery motion to say, I want to see your Facebook account. I want to see what's on it. And very often now, by the way, these are part of criminal investigations. Someone turns up dead, you want to see Facebooks. I was talking to a student yesterday who showed me a posting on Facebook where a father talked about dropping his infant daughter. And he put that on Facebook. Well, that is, and the baby had suffered injuries. That could easily be used as evidence against him in a child abuse case. We're also seeing employers monitoring employees on Facebook and on social media. So terminating people if you post something that is against the company, for example. These are serious legal issues. Now, the Electronic Communications Privacy Act really has to do with electronic communication. I don't want to go too far down this rabbit hole because it's one of these changing areas. But suffice it to say, I always tell clients that you do not own nor protect your email. It's exceedingly difficult to maintain privacy online. And if you send an email, you should expect that your spouse, your mother, the police, your minister, all of them are going to see this. There's so many loopholes and so many exclusions under the protection of email and protection of electronic communication that you should consider it just open source material. Now, it's maybe not, but you should. The terminology I tell my clients and students is you are fish swimming in an electronic sea. You are constantly being recorded and monitored, and you need to accept that as part of business. All right, so online defamation, and this is an interesting problem. We're in the midst of the presidential election right now. What happens when someone gets online and they post an obvious lie? So suppose someone says, Donald Trump once blew up the Brooklyn Bridge so that he could build a new one. And it's an obvious lie. And that person posts it on Facebook. Well, okay, you can sue that guy maybe. Okay, he accused someone of a crime they didn't commit. He did it with actual malice. Great, it's defamation. But what about Facebook? Facebook put that up. Now, under regular legislation, Facebook has no liability. Notice how different this is going to be than if it was a published material. If you went to Random House or Hardcore Books and you said, I want you to put out this book that says Trump blew up the Brooklyn Bridge, and they published it, they would have liability. But the internet has been able to avoid most of this. Now, there's serious criticism of it, and there's talk now, of course, of regulating it, saying if these internet service providers, if these platforms, Google, Twitter, whatever we're talking about, provide a way in which defamation can be sent out to the public, then they bear liability. And that's just something that we're fighting about right now. Privacy is very difficult to keep. You should be aware that all sorts of information is collected about you. Sometimes it's obvious. Sometimes they'll tell you they're using cookies. Sometimes they won't. Sometimes they will say, check off if you want to use our services or not. For a quick example, most people don't know that every Google search you've ever run has been saved by Google, and they use it. They use it, for example, to give you targeted ads. It shouldn't come as a surprise if you go on Amazon next time and, 2 weeks ago you were looking for raincoats, that you're going to see on the little sidebar to the side a whole bunch of things advertising raincoats. Because that search has been saved, used, and sometimes sold. All right, as I said, this is a very quick chapter. I didn't want to go too far into it because, again, a lot of this is kind of older technology. But the next chapter we're going to pick up with, the last chapter in this larger unit, is criminal law, and most people get a real kick out of that. So I'll see you for Chapter 10 coming up.